Today, instead of working off of a slide deck, I'm actually going to be working from a website. And so I'm going to drop that link in the chat first and let everybody get to the website. And this is a website that I've started maintaining with just different updates that come along. And I do an updates webinar every month. But I wanted to just be able to really dive in and focus on Claude today because it's part of my updates webinar, but I just had to just basically just skim over it. And it's something that really needs a little more dedication, a little more attention. And so that webinar has, or that website link has been dropped in the chat. And that homepage of it, we're not going to really cover much of that today. I've covered that before in another webinar, but I will just point out that this is a chart that I've started keeping of kind of the big advancements in AI, the ones that I find that are most impactful for education. And Claude has made it twice in the last couple of weeks. And so they've had some pretty, well, actually 4 times in the last several weeks. So they've had some pretty big, amazing updates. And a lot of people are not so familiar with Claude. Everybody pretty much knows ChatGPT, but a lot of people haven't used Claude very much. And so I did want to take this opportunity just to go through some of the big updates that they've had. In particular, this session, we're focusing on artifacts. And so at the top of this page, there are tabs for the different tools. And we're going to skip to the tab that says Claude today. And we're going to be focusing the entire time on Claude. And so if you will come to that page and kind of follow along, I'll be going through a few things about it, but mostly we're going to dive into the artifact feature and then a couple of new feature previews that have came out recently that affect artifacts. And so at the top, it just as a basic introduction to Claude, I'm not going to go through those today, but just like ChatGPT, it is a very, very powerful large language model, and it can do a lot of great things. It can do image analysis and description, text summarization, analysis, interactive content creation, language translation, data analysis and visualization. And if you want to explore those later on your own, I will just point out that there is underneath each one of those a little learning objective and then some ideas for testing those out. But again, our session today is focusing entirely on the artifacts piece. So we're going to move on into that artifacts piece. And artifacts is something that came out a couple of months ago. And it was originally a feature preview, and you had to turn it on to kind of test it out. But then it has now been moved into just the standard part. It's just part of the platform, so you don't have to turn it on anymore. But basically what artifacts does is Claude works as a coder, basically a coding partner. And so as it allows you to create things like interactive games, apps, and interactive activities and more. And it actually does the coding for you right in front of your eyes. And so you basically just tell it what you want it to create, and then you watch it create it, and then you engage with it and iterate and adjust it until you get the artifact the way that you want it. And then you're able to share that artifact with a link, or you're able to ask it to put it in HTML code, embed it in a website, and things like that. And so we are going to look at some example artifacts, and then we're going to have some hands-on time today and allow you to actually build some of your own artifacts. But I want to go through a few first, and then I'll do a demo, and then we'll do some hands-on time. But I do want to point this out because this is important. There is a note here about your end users being able to access what you create with Claude. Because if a school system is very tight and locked down on their internet browsing, it's possible that whenever you create something with Claude, your students will not be able to access it because that may be blocked on the campus. And so, if that happens, if you're going to create something for students, first of all, I would definitely test it first on a student account and a student device and on the school campus and make sure that it's going to work. If it does not work, what needs to happen is this little, at the beginning of that what is at the beginning of every artifact that you create with Claude is this little URL tag, I guess, is https://claude.site/artifacts/. And if you find that your students or you can't access these on your school campus, that would have to be whitelisted. And of course, that's not a decision that I can make, and many of you may not be able to make. It's something that you would have to request from your CTO or whoever manages your network. And what I will say is that if all of the artifacts have that tag, and so it doesn't matter if you're putting it in a Canvas course, a Google site, sharing it through an email, any way that you share it, it's just kind of like a Google Doc. If it's not shared correctly, it doesn't matter how you share the link, they won't be able to access it. That will be the same for these if it's not allowed on your domain. But if they do allow that tag on your domain, if they whitelist that, that does not give people access to Claude, the large language model, the LLM. It only gives them access to the created artifacts that people have created. And so that's an important distinction to make if you are advocating for this, because first of all, Claude LLM is not allowed for people that are under 18 currently. And so you can't go in there and advocate for your CTO to turn it on for students, the Claude.ai. But Claude.ai and Claude site artifacts are two different URLs. And so if they allow the site artifacts, they're not allowing the Claude large language model. So that's an important distinction to make. And I hope I'm being clear about that. Is that clear, or do I need to clarify that? That making sense? Okay. And so I just wanted to share that information with you, because I don't want you to spend a whole lot of time and make this really cool thing and get excited and go try to use it in class one day and it be blocked. And so we want to make sure that we're upfront about that to begin with. But if your district will allow them, you're welcome to share this website with your CTOs and let them kind of explore it, and it will kind of explain it as well. If they will allow them, then you can create some really cool things that your users can interact with, learning tools and things like that. And they would be allowed to interact with them, but not necessarily to use the Claude language model. And so I'm going to go through a few that I've created, and I am kind of watching the chat, but we just have a handful of people. So feel free to unmute at any time if you have something to say and I miss it in the chat. I'll be happy to stop and answer any questions or anything. But I just wanted to show you, first of all, what artifacts are by giving you some examples of ones that I've created. And then I'll go through the steps of how to create an artifact. Then we'll have some hands-on time where we're going to create some artifacts yourself. And then hopefully we'll have some sharing time where people can share what they have created. Okay, so this first one, as you see, this is a weather gap fill in the blank exercise. And so it's actually interactive. I've asked for it in HTML embed code so I can embed it on my website. And so if I were a 5th grade student and I wanted to take this, I could go in here and I'm just going to click blindly, kind of, sort of, so that I'll miss a couple. So I can go here and actually answer these questions, and then I can have them checked, and I can see I did very badly, and I really need to study my weather facts. Okay, so it will actually live interact with a student or whoever, but they wouldn't be able to do anything else with it. And then on this one, I actually just revised it as a game. So I took the same prompt, which I'm going to show you in a minute, and I said, now make it a game where I have to catch the right answer. And so as you can see, the answers are kind of moving around, and I have to catch them. And then it will tell me if I have them correct or not. And I'm really not even looking at the answers. But if you look at the top right here, this is a drop down. If you drop down this, it will show you what I did to create that graphic. So what my prompt was. And so I said, create an interactive fill in the blank exercise about weather for 5th grade students to support the standard, in triple quotes below. And this is called a delimiter, and it's a recommended prompting practice. And I like to just kind of highlight that as well. Pasting in the standard is also a recommended prompting practice always for teachers. If you are trying to address a particular standard, always put that standard in, the actual text of the standard, copy and paste it in. But when I tell it that it is in triple quotes below, it just helps the model to make sure that that it knows what I'm talking about. And so I put the standards down there. Each gap should have 4 options that I can click to choose. All 4 answers should be plausible answers and with no obvious wrong or silly answers. And I actually added that because the first one they were just all silly. There was no thinking to it. So just like any other prompting that you're doing with any large language model, you need to be evaluative and critical, and you need to keep iterating and asking for corrections. And I said you'll need to include a button to check the answers, add a light blue background and colorful graphics representing the weather, and then use HTML code for embedding in a Google site. And so that was my prompt. And then my example, there's a link there to it. I embedded it on the web page, but if you share the link with someone, I'm just going to show you what that looks like as well. So I'm going to click my example right there. And as you can see, it opens up as a web page. And up here at the top is where I was talking about what needs to be whitelisted. That beginning tag of that, if that's not, if your district is really locked down on its network, that would need to be whitelisted. But if it is whitelisted, then anybody can go in and they can actually engage with this live. Now, down here in the right corner, it says Remix Artifact. That will require a Claude account. And so somebody who's not allowed to use Claude.ai, which is no student, nobody under 18 can't do that. You have to have a Claude account, but you could click Remix Artifact. You're welcome to do that if you want to. And if you do that, then it will open up that artifact, and then you can just kind of change it up. You can put different standards in it, change the directions, and it will let you use my artifact and just change it and make it your own. And so when you share an artifact with a link, that is what happens. And so it will kind of create it, and then you can iterate through it and change it up and make it your own. Okay, so that is that one. And then this is when I revised it as a game. I just kind of changed up the directions a little bit, made it a game instead. And I am going to collapse that because it takes up a lot of room. So that's one. This is another one that I've created about deforestation and its impact on endangered species. And so as you can see, it has a time control here, a year control, so I can change that. And notice that it is kind of moving now. And so now it's moving. But if I want to see, like if I increase the deforestation rate, you can see that the mammals, the endangered species are going down. And so it's just a good little interactive to help people see the relationship between, and then if I increase my conservation efforts, I can see that now I'm saving more of the mammals and the birds and the fish and the endangered species. And then it will show you the forestry coverage. And so it's just a good way for people to kind of engage and interact and understand that concept. And again, my prompt is on this drop down if you click there. And so this is the exact prompt that I used. And then I had to you always have to do a lot of follow-up, just like you do in any good prompting session that you do with any large language model. And so this is just an example to use to kind of say it. Like first I checked it. It didn't really work. The text boxes didn't work, so I had to have it fix it. Then I get the HTML, and then I wanted the text was too large, so I had to make some adjustments along the way. And then again, the link to my interactive is right there. And so if anybody wants to engage with it live, you can go in and engage with it. If you would like to remix that one and you have a Claude account, you can click there and remix it as well. Okay, so I'm going to collapse that one again. We'll look at a couple more, and then we'll go through one demo of me creating one in front of you, and then you'll have time to create your own. Okay, and so this was a very, very simple one, but it's just a practice problem generator for algebra. And so really it's just click a button and it creates practice problems. And then you click another button and it creates more practice problems. And so you could give it any particular standard that you wanted practice problems for, and it would create them. And so that one's very simple. Again, the prompt is up here. You can kind of look at it. You can click to see my example. This one is, I created a rubric using a rubric prompt on AI for Education's prompt library. And they have one about an egg drop challenge. So I just took it verbatim and I put that into Claude. And instead of creating it in a table like you might do in ChatGPT or anything, I ask it to create it and use graphics to kind of make it more fun and engaging and use a superhero theme. And so you can see the result here. Okay, so it made it, it kind of used all of these cute little superhero things and icons. And so that is the prompt for it. This is the prompt from them. And then I just kind of added some other things, like I wanted to revise it to a 4-point and make it superhero themed. And then it was giving me those the HTML break indicators. I wanted to take those away. And so just iterated a little bit. And then there's a link to my final artifact for that one as well. Now I could have, especially now with the new capabilities, made it interactive as well, to where I click it and it tallies. But I didn't do that for that one. I just kind of did it that way. But then it also has an icon key down here that shows what the little icons mean. This one is a Lego fraction practice one that I created. And as you can see, it's giving me a fraction here. And then it has these little Lego things. So I'm going to get that one wrong. And I'm going to check my answer. And it's going to tell me that I'm wrong. And then I'm going to go back and make it right. And then it's going to say simplify if possible. And so if I can simplify it, then I need to simplify it as well. And then I can check my answer. And it says the Lego correct representation is correct, but the simplification fraction is not. And so you can kind of just keep going through there and checking those. And then if you correct it and check it again, then so it gives automatic feedback. And then it just randomizes. It just keeps repeating that. And again, my prompt up here, just for your information, you can see it up here. And then I had to make some iterations as well, like I wanted it to make the blocks colorful, and then I added this simplification piece to it afterwards. And these are getting a little more complicated. This is an economic simulation one with supply and demand and dollar value. And so you can, like, kind of, if you're trying to demonstrate the demand goes way up on something, then what happens to the supply? What happens to the dollar value? What if the inflation goes up? And so just a simulation to kind of illustrate some of those points. And then another one on the national debt simulator. Don't want to depress us all, so we'll not spend much time on that one. But assuming our national debt was not as bloated as it is, I think we're now around the 37, 38, somewhere in there. I'm not keeping up with it. But you can kind of adjust, like if the interest goes way up, what is that doing to the annual interest that we pay? And then what is that doing to our dollar value relative to that, and so forth. And then there's another debt simulation one there, which you can kind of look at. So if I play that through, it will kind of show you on a graph what the national debt is doing. And then you can reset it. And again, those are kind of depressing, so I'm going to move on past those. And then there's the ecosystem simulation here as well, to where if you started, it kind of shows the relativity between predators and prey. And if your predators grow up, the prey goes down and so forth. And so it's just another way of creating a simulation. And all of those have the prompts up there for any of them during our playtime that you're interested in remixing or kind of changing up. They all have those prompts ready. And this one is creating graphs from a data source, which became possible recently, especially with the analysis piece that we're going to talk about. And I just fed it a data source. And the data source this time was this Common Sense Media article called The Dawn of the AI Era, Teens, Parents, and the Adoption of Gen AI at Home and in School. And so all I did was gave it that graph, and then I asked it to create graphs on student usage. And so it pulled from the data from a big, long PDF article and then created graphs for me. And then they're interactive. You can kind of hover over them and see what they represent. And so that's something that honestly I do quite a bit, pulling in graphs and having it analyze or big studies and articles and have it create graphs and charts for me. Okay, so before we go to the next, there are a couple of updates, but I want to go in first of all and just show you how to create a basic artifact, and then we will look at the updates of the analysis feature and the PDF vision, which just came out also. But first I want to just give you some time to engage and play with it. And so the first thing is to make sure that you have a Claude account. And if you don't, you may need to open one. But if you just go to let's get that out of my way. Will it move? Okay. So if you just go to Claude.ai, those are my artifacts. So those will not work. Okay. And so I'm just going to go to a new tab and type Claude.ai. And of course, you will need to create an account if you have not. And does anybody need a minute to create an account? Because it will take you a minute to do that. Or does everybody have an account already? Anybody need a minute? We all good? Okay. Okay, so if you have an account already, then if you would like to use one of my ideas, you can. But if you have an idea of your own, the key to get it to work as an interactive piece is to ask for interactivity. And that's the way that it opens up the artifact. So if you just go here and you say, summarize this story or write me a lesson plan, you're not going to generally get an artifact. It won't open up. But I'm just going to demonstrate by pulling one of the prompts that I've got in here and using it as an example. So I will use one of the more simple ones. So I'm going to just copy this prompt and I'll do this one over. Okay, so I'm going to copy that prompt and I will pretend I'm doing it for the first time. And so I'm going to paste that in. I'm going to say create an interactive activity to teach fractions to fourth grade students using interactive Lego blocks. Include colorful Lego blocks, some decorative Lego images, present them with a fraction question and colorful Lego blocks that can be dragged across the screen to demonstrate the answer. Tell them if it's right or wrong, and if it's wrong, provide a clue. Right when the answer is correct, present a new scene with a new problem. And so because I said create an interactive activity, it's automatically going to trigger that artifact feature, which is going to split my screen. And you'll see that in just a minute. So I'm going to submit it. And you'll see that how it works is it's going to tell you, first of all, what it's going to do, and it's going to create it in a React element, which is the interactive piece. And then it splits your screen. And as you can see, I'm doing nothing. I couldn't code that if I had a week, let alone 3 seconds like it's doing there. And so it is coding for me. It's writing all the code, and it's kind of telling me what it's doing as it goes. And then you can see on the left over here, the component is kind of spinning. That means it's working, and it does take a little time. Um, not nearly as, again, not nearly as long as it would take me to do it. Okay, and we have an error. Okay, and this does happen sometimes. And it used to be that I would just always copy the error over here into my chat and say, fix this error, and I would paste it. But now they've added this little button where you can just click a button and it will tell it to fix it. And so, and usually the libraries is the main error I'm getting, like it's trying to pull something from a library it doesn't have access to. Because if you code, you have to provide the assets. And so the assets haven't been provided. So I just pressed fix this, and then we will see if it fixes it this time. Normally it does, but like 99% of the time, it will fix its own errors if you tell it to, or if you press that button. And so we will see what happens. And as you can see, it goes every time you make a change, it recodes the whole thing. And so whatever you do, it will recode the whole thing and it will provide you with a new, okay, so now we have a new response. And notice it's just like an LLM, you're not going to get the same thing twice. So this doesn't look like my other one. And this actually looks more like what I wanted because I said I wanted to drag them. So now it looks like it's going to have me drag them. And so what fraction of blocks do you need to make 1/2? Of course, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I don't know. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 8. Okay, so now show me 2/3 using the block. So I guess you're supposed to drag 2/3 in. Okay, so and so you test it. So as soon as it finishes running, you want to test it first of all and see if it's working as you think it should. And I think the directions are a little confusing. A student's not going to know what they're supposed to do. And so I think I would need to give it some directions on how to improve that. And so so I'm going to say provide the directions are not clear. Ask for a fraction of the number of blocks on the bottom. Does that sound sense? For example, 1/2 of 8. And then I'm going to hit enter again. And again, notice that it will go through this whole process again. It's going to generate, it's going to code for me in the front, and then it's going to let me preview the correction. Now, I have had that sometimes where I'd do that, and then like the interaction doesn't work, and maybe the colors aren't what I asked for, or so you always want to evaluate your result and keep iterating and asking for changes until you get what you want. And so in a minute it will finish, and we'll see if it makes more sense. Okay, so now it says drag half of the blocks into the workspace, but now it's kind of giving them the answer. So we'll fix that in a minute. But so now it makes more sense, at least the students know what to do. Okay. And so maybe this could be a first grade activity, not necessarily a fourth grade. Okay. So I'm going to say, so that's better, but don't tell how many blocks to drag, just the fraction. And then it will redo the whole thing again. And I'm not going to have you sit and wait through that whole process, but that gives you the idea. And then when you are finished, I'm going to go through the step next of how to publish it and share it. And then we're going to have some work time, and hopefully everybody will engage with the work time. I hate to not have you have time to actually act on it and work through it, but hopefully everybody is doing that. Okay, so as it finishes, we'll go through just a couple final steps of sharing it. And of course, you could keep iterating. I could ask for more graphics. I could ask for, then follow up with having them simplify the fraction. I could ask for it to do pizza instead of blocks, Legos, or whatever, slices of pizza. You can make any changes that you want to it. But when you are finished, you'll notice that down here at the bottom, it will show you, first of all, the version. If you want to go back to a previous version you liked better, you can click back to a different version, but hopefully it's improving as you go. So I'm going to go to my fourth version. And then you have a couple of options here. First of all, you can copy the contents and then put them elsewhere, like paste them somewhere. You can download it to a file, which I have not personally done because I don't really know what to do with it with a React component. But you can also publish it. And if you publish it, publish and copy link, then it's going to be just like the links that I showed you earlier. If I copy that link and then I send it to someone, I put it in Google Classroom or whatever, and I've made sure that the Claude site artifacts link will work, then whoever gets that file will then open it up and be able to interact with it live. Another thing that I have done and that you might want to do is ask for it in HTML so that you can embed it in a Canvas course if you use Canvas, or you can embed it on a website. And so if you want that, you would just need to say, now provide the HTML code to embed this in a Google site or whatever, and then it will run it again and it will give you the HTML code. But publishing with a link is the easiest way to do. And for us today, that is the easiest way to share it in the chat. And so if you would, after you create your artifact, if you'll drop it in the chat, and that will give us some time, and I can show what everybody has created and we can kind of see each other's work that way. Any questions before we start working on this? I do want to point out again that if you're at a loss for anything to do, each one of these has a sample prompt that you can drop down to and use. And so you're welcome to go and use one of these prompts and adjust it or whatever. But I want to take about 7 minutes just to let people have time to engage with it and play and try to create their own interactive component. And then feel free at any time if you've got something created and you want to share it in the chat, just to drop your link in there. But I am going to set a 7-minute timer. If anybody has any questions before then, please feel free to ask. And then we will go to the other new developments in Claude next. We'll talk about the analysis feature and the PDF viewer feature. I'm going to put on a timer then. And I'm here if anybody has a question during that time. Just remember to evaluate and engage with it. Stacy, can y'all see that timer?
Yes, we sure can.
Okay.
I had to switch back to my screen because I was playing with Claude.
Okay, well, that's good. That's what you're supposed to be doing. So you understood the assignment.
Yes, I did. And your examples really appeal to me because, I've been creating things with the other AIs with the new science standards. So all of your science examples were awesome.
Thank you. Okay, and I guess my timer is not being recorded, but that's okay. I got a message telling me that.
Well, it's showing up on the screen, so we can see it.
Okay, so you asked Stacy if you're on the website, how do you get the code to remix it? Did I answer that question for you?
Yes, and I think I had my screen minimized or too narrow, so I wasn't seeing the drop down at first, but when I expanded it, then I could see that drop down better. So, yeah.
Okay, we have a lot of quiet folks, and I just want to make sure that everybody does want to work on your own. So if you could just kind of give me some feedback, if you are not actually creating on your own, then we can move ahead. But if you do want this time to work on your own, so if anybody who is working on creating an artifact on your own, if you could just give me a thumbs up, either in the chat or from the emoji at the top, then I'll kind of know how to gauge our time. Because I certainly don't want you just sitting there bored for 7 minutes. Okay. I have one thumbs up. Anybody else? Okay, Stacy, you might be outvoted. Anyone else want to continue having work time? Okay. Andrea, you do want to work as well? Great. Okay. Okay. We have about 4 more minutes then. And I'd love to see what you create if you want to drop your link in the chat. I see this timer has a police siren, so I'm going to probably silence it before that goes off so we don't scare anyone. But time sure moves slow when you're practicing wait time.
I'm having trouble finding a place I can copy and paste the standards from.
Oh, I normally will just like pull up another tab and just search for NC DPI standards for whatever.
They're PDFs and they don't want to let me select them.
They're not letting you. Which standards are you looking for specifically, Sue?
I have a great site. Let me post it. I have
Thank
them
you, Stacy.
bookmarked. Yes, I'm I agree with you about being able to find a good site for that. Hold on one sec.
Well, I need to steal that one and use it if you've got a good site. They should make it easier for sure because
Yes, they should.
all AI prompting, you should always have that handy. And so
No.
Stacy shared a great site there, hopefully.
Every
will help
single
you.
one of the curriculum areas, though, or the share their standards in a different way. So I'm most familiar with the science standards, and they are PDFs, but you can copy from their PDFs, which I think is great. But then the other sites like arts and then guidance and healthfully, they all share them in different ways. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how it'll go depending on where you go.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I think they are trying to do some standardizing of that.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that I heard a while back they were working on. So hopefully they'll get that done soon.
Yeah. I've noticed that, like I noticed ELA or science, the science site now, which has been updated, looks a lot like the ELA site. So they are the two most recent updates, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So they're gradually getting more similar.
Yeah. Well, and I would say the more modern, the more modernized ones will have PDFs that are copyable. PDFs are getting a little more user friendly than they used to be.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I stopped the timer so I wouldn't scare anybody with the police siren. But it is 7 minutes has gone, and I would love to see what you've created. If anybody created it, I see Stacy has shared one, and I'm actually just going to open hers, but I'd love to share yours as well. And this is Stacy's. And so as you see, she did a weather patterns one, and she did a drop down.
Yeah, and it did that for me. Like I didn't tell it to do that,
Mhm.
so it chose everything based on the standard I pasted in there. So
I'm just going to randomly check. Try to randomly check some. Let's see. And then check answers. Okay. And so it does check as well. Oops, I left one out.
Yeah, and the answer choices were it had an accurate answer choice for all of the questions. So, accuracy wise, it was aligned and it had a correct choice.
Okay, very good. And you just kind of took the same prompt from the website and used it?
I did, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else get far enough to share what you came up with? I'd be happy to open it up on the screen if you want to drop a link in the chat.
I'm almost there.
Okay. Well, we can wait another minute if you're still working. I don't want to rush through. We still have about almost 20 minutes. I'll show you a couple more of the more recent updates, but
yeah, I felt like with this one, just real quick, is that I would spend more time making sure that this particular game was aligned with the way I would teach it so that, so those kinds of questions and answers really went with the way I would say this to a fifth grader. So that would be the only thing that I would, just make sure, kind of matched up.
Now, did you provide the questions or did it make up the questions for you?
It made them up.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I think
and that's
like
what
that
I
would
did
be,
too.
yeah.
But you could even provide your own questions. Like you could take the questions from a worksheet you've already used and say use these questions in triple quotes and then put that in triple quotes and then would use your own content instead of just making it up as well. And so that might be a good strategy. I'm going to open this other one that Sue just shared also, and we'll have a look at it. Okay. Oh, heat transfer and energy quiz. Somebody's probably gonna have to help me with this one, Stacy.
Yeah, that's great
So,
though. Yeah.
uh,
And see,
okay,
that's cool because there's a whole nother topic, but then using that same kind of format that you created for a whole different area.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Liquids and gases. I'm gonna just guess wildly here. Hopefully I don't look too bad. This happens when we're fluids. Hopefully I missed one at least. Okay, I missed three. I did good, showing you how it checked. Okay, very cool. I like it. And on the image up at the top, Sue, how did you get it to do the animation? Did you just ask for an animation?
I basically just copied and pasted your prompt in there and changed the standards and then changed the topic from was it weather that yours was, and
Yeah.
mine to heat transfer and energy. So it made all that up.
So it made that's the first time I've seen an animation on it. And of course it's
Yeah.
improving all the time, but maybe that's something that it's going to start having the ability to do now, is have animated GIFs as well. Okay, very cool. Anybody else want to share before we move on? Okay. Well, I am going to go back to the website then and just show you a couple of more recent updates that do affect artifacts, because artifacts have been around for a couple months, but they've pushed it through a couple of new things that really make them even more powerful. And so I'm going to scroll on past all of this and get down to the very bottom here. And we've already talked about publishing it. I will show you chat controls in a minute, but there are some example prompts here too that will help you demonstrate PDF vision and analysis, but I'll show you what those are first. And this was just last week. They came out with an update called PDF Enhanced PDF Analysis, or PDF Vision. And if you have worked with PDFs a lot, you know that a lot of AI tools do not do a great job with the images in PDFs. And of course, if you import them into Google Docs or anything, they do a horrible job also. But with this new update to Claude, it's able to take a PDF full of images and graphs and charts, and it's able to actually understand and analyze the images and the text in the images. And so that is a nice improvement. And it does have a limit to the size of the PDF, around 30 megabytes. I've seen 32, it said in one place, but I've from my experience, it's around 30, and then up to 100 pages in length. So some of the really massive ones, it may not do well, but it does a good job with those. If your PDF is too big, then you would have to just break it into, print to PDF and break it into chunks. But it does work really well. And then it also came out with this new thing called analysis, an analysis tool. And it is just an improved code editor, or code creator and an analyzer, and it can create data visualizations much better than it used to. I've been doing that for a while with it, but they were basic and simple. But with this new update recently, it can create a lot more advanced graphs and charts and things, and it can also analyze more advanced data sets in the terms of a CSV file. And so if you have a big complicated data set, you can get it into a CSV. You can upload it and ask Claude to make graphs and charts and data visualizations from it. And so those two tools are both still in the preview mode. They're feature previews, and that means you have to first of all enable them. And I'm going to show you how to do that, but it's in the corner of your user icon, and they're in there separately. And there's also a LaTeX editor in there for math folks, but that you have to use in an API, which is a whole different thing that you can't use it in the Claude web app. So we're going to ignore that one. But when you do that, then you can create even more complex things. These are things I've created lately. These are things I created several months ago, or several weeks ago. So you can see how it has improved over time with these new tools that's added on. And so for this one, I have the data set linked here. It's just a data set that I pulled off of a public website in Tableau, and the data set is death rates in several different countries. And I had to cut down the data because it was too big, it was too massive. So I just pulled some of the data out of that. But then I asked Claude to create an infographic on life expectancy, which is sorry, my dog is yapping, which is not data that was present in there. And so it was able to analyze the death rates and extrapolate the data to turn that around and then present an infographic with life expectancy. And so if you look at the graphic or the data that I gave it, it doesn't have life expectancy there, okay, which I thought that was really impressive. And then also the fact that it's able to, I ask it to add these flags and colorful imagery. And so it creates an infographic for me. And it did all of this. I just gave it a prompt, and the prompt is up here. Basically, I provided the CSV file, and then I said, analyze the data I attached and create line graphs demonstrating life changes. And then I kept going, and I asked it to create it in a infographic. And so this is the infographic it created. Now with the vision capabilities, I was able to do something I haven't done before, which is upload the North Carolina guidelines, which has a lot of visualizations in it, a lot of graphics. And previously, when I had uploaded that to any of these tools, it pretty much just was not able to do anything with the images. So with this new update, I was able to upload that whole document. And first of all, just ask for a summary, and that was very plain, very basic. And to explain the graphics, I just wanted to see if this worked. And then I said I wanted to turn it into an infographic, and it did one with like drop downs. And then I said I want one where all of the graphics show so I can print it. And it suggested that I do them by focus area instead because it was too large of a file. So I said, okay. And so here are the resulting artifacts. So this is the one for leadership and vision. It was able to pull those key points out. And then the 3 bikes analogy that I have in there, it was able to kind of explain it. Notice you don't see the bikes. One day, I haven't finished with this yet. I'm actually going to adjust this more and use DPI colors, and I'm going to ask it to use bike graphics. And I think I will be able to get it to do that with more time. But you also have limits, even on the Pro plan. If you like this took a lot of usage, and so I exceeded my limit in it, and I had to wait a while to work on it. And so I'll have to go back to it and keep working on it. But it was able to pull that out, and then it has this 4-step roadmap. We have a graphic of this in our guidelines, and it was able to again pull the data out from that and create that. And then over here on the right as the human capacity part of it, it created a whole separate one on that with our AI literacy timeline, and then the craft framework. And then in the curriculum and assessment one, it pulled out the stuff from the every graphic. Colors don't match, but then the Holly Clark graphic we have on AI detectors. And so it was able to pull all of that imagery, all of the data and all of the words and all of the meaning out of the images in the PDF, which is a huge improvement. And so that's a very new thing, and I haven't got to do it yet. And on this one, I ask it to add some little symbols, which I'll do to all the rest of them when I go back to this and keep working with it. But so it was able to pull that in, and again, pulled all the relevant data from that document. And so to practice these things, I wanted to give you time again to build another infographic. First of all, we're going to turn these 2 things on, but I want to show you that on this website up here, at the top under publishing your artifact, there's a drop down right here that has 10 different ideas that kind of that you can use to kind of demonstrate the analysis feature and the or the PDF vision feature. And so if any of those resonate with you and work with your curriculum, you're welcome to just kind of copy them and paste them in and edit them. If you want to use any of the ones that ask for CSV data, I've included a folder here that has some sample data sets that you can use, because what you have to do is download the CSV file and then upload it. And so I'll do that as a demonstration, and I'll show you how to turn it on. But I'm going to go in and I'm just going to download this one on Civil War battles. And so I'm going to download that as a CSV. CSV is the file format that it needs. And then I'm going to go into Claude and close out all these artifacts because those are not Claude. Okay. And so I'm going to go back into my Claude account, and I'm going to go over here and start a new chat because this is a totally new thing. And I'm just going to paste that. Oops, pasted the wrong thing. And so I'm going to go get that. The data set that I did was the timeline of Civil War battles. And so I think I have right here is a history timeline builder. And so I'm going to say create an interactive timeline that shows the location, casualties, outcome of each battle. And it would be great if students could filter by year and see the pattern in the conflict's progression. And so I'm going to go to Claude and I'm going to paste that in. And then I'm going to add that CSV file by clicking the paperclip. And notice it has a camera there too, so you can add images as well. But I'm going to add that CSV file, which I already have downloaded. And then I'm going to add a couple of other things to my directions. I'm going to say include graphics to help illustrate the content. And I'm going to hit enter and then we're going to watch it go again. And because I said interactive, it's going to automatically make it an artifact. That's kind of the key. So I'm going to make it interactive and just watch it code for me. And then again, whenever it finishes, while it's doing that, and it does have an error, same thing. So I'm gonna have it fix that error, but I forgot to show you how to turn on these things. So I need to show you that first of all. So over in the lower left-hand corner of your Claude account, you should have your initials and your name. And when you click that, there's something there that says feature preview. And so when they roll out a new feature, it's kind of like in beta testing for a while. You have to turn it on. And so for feature preview, when you go there are 3 of them now. The analysis tool, and you literally just click a toggle right there to turn it on. And then the visual PDF, same thing. And so it has toggles. So you'll need to turn those on before you run this simulation this time, or those features will not be activated. And if you are really into math, there is a latex rendering again, but you have to run it in an API, which is a whole separate ball of wax. It's not, you can't run it in the website like we're demonstrating today. But those are the 2 new features, so you'll need to turn them on first. Okay, now I'm going to go back to this and see what our issue is. Okay, so it says it cannot read the properties, and so I'm going to try fixing it with Claude and run it and see, and usually it will. And the other one I demonstrated, it gave me errors a couple times, and just by clicking that button, it corrects itself. I don't know why it doesn't do it to begin with, but if it does make an error, you can have it correct itself, and it normally will. And so waiting again. Okay, and there we have it. Okay, so here's my timeline. I've got the Battle of Bull Run, the casualties, and the Confederate victory. And so it has the dates in chronological order, and it did everything that I asked it to do. And so, but again, oh, and it gives me a legend as well. And so an intensity legend based on the number of casualties. But again, you could keep engaging with the model and iterating. So maybe you want it vertical instead of horizontal. Maybe you want to add some more dates to it. Whatever the case may be, maybe you want to make it interactive where students can click it and learn more about it. I haven't tried that. That might work and it might not. But at any rate, when you're finished with it, then again, you've got the publish right there. But if I ask it to put it in HTML, I will show you that this time because I didn't show you last time. And so now write the full HTML code to embed this on a Google site. It's what I always say. If you're going to put it in Canvas, I think it would be the same, but I always just specify that because I'm embedding them in Google. And so I will, and it is writing it. Sometimes if it will just say, it will just give you like the iframe code and tell you to add the URL there, and that doesn't work. And so I always go back and say, no, I need the full HTML code, and it will provide it for me. And so over here on the right, you'll see that now it is in HTML. It starts with the doc type HTML. And so I can just take that code, and when it finishes, it's still not finished. Gotta give it a minute. And it is 4:27, so hopefully I will be able to show you this. Oh, and it made it look different too, which is cool. Okay, so if I want to take that code now, then I can just copy the whole code. Stacy, do you mind getting the evaluation link ready for me as well? Okay.
I sure will.
And then I can take it and go into, of course, I can't edit this site. This is I'm on my private account there, but I could go in and edit, add an embed code like you do anywhere else, and it would embed that on the site like I've done all of these others. And so that is the latest 2 things that came out with Claude. And those are at the bottom of the website. Talks about both of those. And all you do is toggle them on and they're just automatically enabled. But it just gives you more power to work with data and to create things like visualizations with data. But it is almost time, and I want to give you a couple of minutes for the evaluation. Any questions that you have, Stacy's going to drop the link to the evaluation in there. But I encourage you to keep exploring with Claude because it is a fabulous tool. tool. One thing that is different from ChatGPT, which I don't think I mentioned earlier, is that it does not have a live internet connection. And so it is a tool. It's not going to be always the one that you need. Sometimes you might need that live internet connection. And if you haven't looked at ChatGPT lately, it now has a search feature as well. And so you can actually use it as a search tool. Claude's not going to do that for you. Claude does have an app, but it doesn't have the like live conversation, emotive capabilities. And so I use both of them, and I use Gemini sometimes, and I use lots of other tools. But it's just another tool in your arsenal. And the things that it does best are writing, and then this creating these interactive graphics, interactive activities, graphics, charts, analyzing data. It does extremely well. And so I use it when I want to do those things. Any questions or anything? We have about a minute left. The evaluation link is in the chat, and you will get an email with a certificate for attendance. And I'll also say that this website, I do keep up to date. I am a little bit behind on a couple of updates on ChatGPT, but I update this fairly frequently, and there's some updates I need to make to the video generation also. But it's a website you can kind of bookmark and hang on to, and when new things happen, it gives you a place to kind of keep up with them, because I try to filter out the noise and focus on the ones that are more applicable to education. Because as you know, if you're following it at all, there are a million tools and there's something new happening every day, but they're not all specifically helpful for educators. And so those will be featured on this website. And I thank you for your time. It is 4:30. We'll stick around for a few minutes if anybody does have any questions or anything. Happy to answer them. Thank you, Sue. I appreciate it. I hope that you find it useful. I'd love to see things you're creating. If anybody creates anything really cool with this after today, I'd love to see it as well.
Yeah, you guys, if you send things that you create with this, let us know. I would love to make a wakelet about them, because you know how I am about wakelets. I will share your work. We could put them on Vera's website.
That would be great.
Be cool.